KD, Krishna Das, it's an honor. Thank you so much for connecting with us. How
Thank
are you?
you. I'm good. I'm good. How you doing down there?
Doing good, doing good.
Yeah.
In Western Australia, we're in a bit of a bubble. It's quite a beautiful bubble, but it's
Uh-huh.
allowing us to kind of witness the world with quite a peripheral awareness.
Mm.
Yeah, that's one of the blessings of Perth being so fucking isolated.
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it has handled this quite well. So how are you in New York? I mean, you're upstate, but New York's been one of the places that's been deeply challenged.
New York City for sure. We're about an hour north of the city and it's very quiet here. There's uh there's been quite a few cases in the county, but where I am there's a nice place to walk and there's no through traffic, so it's quiet, it's good, and my daughter brings food. So I haven't been out of the house really hardly at all for 4 months.
Oh, good.
I'm digging it.
Great. And how are you? And how's your practice? You look amazing. I have heard you talk
Thank you.
about like your practice really being amplified, really being at its depth when you're with people, when you're in community. And I've heard
Mm,
you speak so much about that
yeah.
richness and that importance of Sangha. So how have you been during this time of isolation?
Uh, really, after, a few weeks to get used to the technical stuff, how to transmit and receive over the internet with some ease. It's been great. I feel, you know, even when we're all in one room together and the physical bodies are close to each other, it's not the physical space we're sharing really. It's the heart space, it's the mind space. And I find that I feel it regardless, even virtually. When I can't even hear people sing back physically, I can feel this. I feel the space, and it's very beautiful. Uh, and it seems that everybody seems to appreciate it as well. I mean,
Mm.
back and forth. So on that level, it's been very educational to recognize that the mind space, the heart space, is really where we live. Uh, and this physical body is just like a dump truck that carries around our consciousness. But the
Mm.
consciousness has very little to do with the body, really, other than being aware of the body. It's not in the body, really. The body's in the consciousness.
Totally.
Yeah, so it's been very interesting.
That's really cool to hear. And I often do contemplate like the mystery of the internet. Like, could it possibly be this kind of training ground for that, for connecting with the heart mind, connecting beyond our limited small mind, small
Yeah.
body? And it's really interesting to hear you bring that up.
Well, like everything else, it will be what people make it.
Right.
And, there are people who now just watch porn 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And there's people who search out spiritual stuff and watch videos of great masters and hear teachings. And so it's really like everything. The internet it's like a magnifying glass for everybody's stuff and
Mm.
what everybody aspires to individually. And it keeps it the, on a positive level. It can keep reinforcing uh, kindness and compassion and connection and interdependence, aware of that. On the other hand, it can also throw you into these black holes of despair and negativity and what do they call it? All these conspiracy theories and stuff like that in your mind, and you start seeing out there in the internet all the shadows in your own mind, and you don't
Yeah.
recognize that that's what you're seeing, so you take it as real, and it can be very very destructive for a person and for
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah.
Agreed. So my wife and I often contemplate like So we talk about the trainings we've done and our time spent with you and Ram Dass and so many great teachers, and the value of like being in person, in community. And when, I mean, I've got your book here and reading of your stories of being with Maharaji and the pilgrimages and whatnot. Do you think people that haven't done those types of pilgrimages can create, especially in these times where of isolation in so many places, can they create the situation, the experiences, the education that can be just as potent in their own house? Do you think that's possible?
Of course, you know, I
Yeah,
think it's totally possible. I think theoretically it could be difficult because, you know, because you're missing the interaction with other beings who are with the Sangha, with other beings on the path. On the other hand, it's all a question of karmic ripening and karmic readiness.
mm,
You know, the same situation can happen to two people. One of them takes it and moves with it, and the other one is destroyed by it.
true.
So it's really just a question of each individual being aware of what's going on within oneself, you know. And basically, if one has a basic understanding that what's possible in life, that it is possible to live in this world in a good way without being destroyed by either the external stuff or your own stuff, your mental stuff inside, your emotional stuff, then that part of you will seek to deepen itself. But of course, if people don't have that understanding, then, you know what, one of the famous sayings is, when a pickpocket meets a saint, all he sees is the pockets,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And that's very true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happening today. People having all kinds of experiences, positive and negative, and it's all their own projections, our own projections. But one must find a way to calm one's ass down. There's no two ways about it. You know, it comes down to that on a very basic level.
Mm.
Ultimately, there might be different types of awareness to arise and other practices to do. But one way or another, we have to find a way to calm down and not be eaten alive by our stuff. And it's hard. It's hard because those emotional clouds have this quality of, it's always going to be like this. It sucks. I'm stupid. I'll never get it together. I have nothing. I've never done anything. I'll never do anything. I'll never get anywhere. And when you're really in that, it's like eternal damnation.
Mm.
But you know, they say eternal damnation is eternal when you're in it.
Right.
You know, it's only a state of mind, ultimately, at least for us at this point. And when we're in that state of mind, it feels like it's always going to be like that, and it's terribly crippling. But
Mm-hmm.
then it passes, or you forget it temporarily. You watch a movie or something, and you're not being eaten by it, but you don't notice that. So really, in the midst of all this swirling around stuff inside and outside, we need to spend some time calming down, just
Mm-hmm.
letting go, just for even just short periods in the day. Don't try to sit for like 10 hours like that, you know. All you do is make yourself sick, you know,
Mm-hmm.
give yourself a headache.
Yeah, I deeply appreciate how over the years how transparent you've been and just human and sharing of your struggles. And that's what I love about the whole
I've
Sangha. You
tried
know, it's
I've tried to be everything else and failed, so I'm just left here. What can I tell you? You know,
we need that shit. We need
I'm
it
a
so
failure,
bad because
total failure.
it's helpful though. It helps people. And again, same with a lot of the Sangha, a lot of the great teachers that Maharaji and Ram Dass and you have brought together in the community very organically, it seems. But
Yeah,
there
it
seems to
is.
be a real like giving of permission for your humanness, really, really relaxing into it and bringing loving awareness to it. And yeah, I really thank you for being so honest and transparent and candid with the darker aspects of your life and how you've just been really honest with it, and
Uh-huh.
chanting's been your thing. And please
Yeah,
speak to that,
yeah,
your journey a bit of working with your inner darkness and self-hatred and even addictions,
yeah.
and doing the healing, and how chanting really came in as the practice for you.
You know, we have this fantasy or this imagination that if we do some practice, if we get on the path, something is going to happen, and then everything will be all right. You know, we'll finally feel the way we want to feel. But you know, that's just the ego talking. That's just the ego saying, I'm going to try to arrange this shit so I feel good, you know, and so that I avoid suffering. And so a lot of times our practice and our daily life is the quality of it is ruined by those fantasies that that we're going to be different. Well, one time I was sitting with Maharaji, and he used to come and give darshan to us in the evening after everyone had left the temple and just a few people who were living there with him were there. There were about 5 or 6 Westerners and a few Indians. And I had put on my clean clothes, and I went and sat in front of them, and I almost laughed out loud because all of a sudden I realized I was waiting for something to happen. And that something that was going to happen was going to be what I called enlightenment, of course, without even wondering what I even meant by that, right? And I, all of a sudden, I realized that my idea of enlightenment was someplace that I would not be.
Yeah.
I'm not, you know, here I am, but when enlightenment happens, I won't be here.
Mm-hmm.
And I laugh because, you know, if something could be the exact opposite of something else, that's what it is.
Right.
And I realized I'm always going to be here in one form or another. I'm here. And the reason I thought that enlightenment was someplace I wouldn't be was my own self-hatred, my own self-loathing, the darkness in my own heart, the unhappiness and sadness and anger and grief and all that stuff. And so I thought the button will be pushed and everything will go away, including me. And it's not exactly like that, to say the least.
Mm.
So a lot of times in dealing with our stuff, we get very discouraged because it doesn't seem to go away. But you know, uh, that is a self-defeating story that we tell ourselves about what's going on. First of all, we're evaluating, you know, you're evaluating mind, which is ridiculous. You know, what does it know? Nothing. You know, Mr. Tuar used to say, judgmental mind is like being in a boat heading down a river to the rapids and looking at the bank of the river, and you think the bank is moving, but you're sitting still.
Yeah.
And you're just like 20 feet from going over this huge waterfall.
Right.
You know, so this is evaluated mind. There's no reality to it. Uh, so even still today, it's the same story. I'm dealing with emotions and issues that grab my consciousness. And while I'm supposed to be sitting, meditating, or doing japa, you know, this stuff is still pulling me away like a huge bird that comes and grabs me and flies off with me. But then it drops me
Mm-hmm.
after some period of time. And the idea is to just be with what's happening. You keep your practice going, you keep the name going, the japa, the repetition of the name or the mantra, as best you can, no matter what's going on. And Maharaji said, do it, repeat the name when you're with devotion or without devotion, when you're angry, when you're sad, when you're tired. But do it, because if you don't do it, then what? You must plant this anchor, drop this anchor down into the ocean, or the boat just gets blown around. There's nothing's going to save it except that anchor.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to plant that anchor. And whatever we have to go through, we're going to go through. What are you going to do? You stub your toe in the morning. You didn't plan on that, but it hurts all day long, and it keeps grabbing your mind. Or somebody dies. I had a dream of a friend of mine last week that I haven't seen in almost 10 years or more. And all of a sudden, so I wrote a letter to him, and I was looking his address up online. I knew he wasn't on any social media. And I came across an article saying he died 10 years ago. Whoa.
Mm.
And I didn't know. It was really a powerful thing. So what's going to happen is going to happen. All we can do is find a way that empowers us and strengthens our ability to not be destroyed by whatever is going to happen. If we were really advanced, we would be able to stay in that space while stuff happens. But we're not, so it just pulls us out of into these emotional issues and emotional clouds. And we're gone until the energy behind it dissipates. But that's, I think, the key. The more practice you do, the less time you spend in negative states of mind. It's not that you've pushed a button to end that state of mind or change it. It's that the practice itself reverberates through your life and your consciousness, regardless of what's happening. And the stuff that grabs us, it doesn't hold us as long. We're more fluid, so it can't really hold us as long. It might hold us for a while, but then we're freed of it somehow from within.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I just want to bring in some of my experience, and I'm sure some listeners can relate as well. I was, without a doubt, a cynic of chanting, and it would bring up a lot.
I'm still a cynic, by the way. We'll see. The jury's out. We'll see if it fucking works.
And it would bring up so much shit for me, and I at the time didn't know what to do with it. I didn't have the narrative, the teaching to help, like, just work with the shit coming up. And I was really adverse to it. I would literally feel, when we would go to chant, like I was gonna vomit. I had such an adverse reaction, and even like it would bring up old stuff from being the only Jewish kid in our community and being forced to synagogue. It would bring up all that shit of like, I want nothing to do with anything religious or cultish, and not to mention it was bringing up stuff. But I kept seeing people like yourself and Ramdas and cool yogis that I admired and trusted and saw, like, yeah, they're doing good shit. They're really bringing it all together. And I had a kind of faith that I don't even know if I wouldn't have called it faith at the time, but there was a trust. There was a trust that, something's going on here. And I would keep doing it, even though it felt like shit, was feeling nothing good from it. But over the years, I mean, there were a couple peak experiences that definitely shined the light of like, holy, there's something to this. But at least a couple years, if not more, of it being really boring, being really bringing up all my just judgments. I'd be judging people that looked all blissful and high. I'd be judging myself for not being able to sing. It would bring up all religious Jewish baggage. Like, it was just shit for at least a
Yeah.
couple years. And I know some people can relate to that. So there's these couple pages that I think are really helpful in your book. For those of you that don't know, Chance of a Lifetime, it's just awesome. But this particular sharing of Sri Ramakrishna talking about the planting of seeds, I think
Yeah.
that would be helpful for people that
Yeah. Very.
kind of conceptually hear what we're talking about, but they're going through what I was just talking about of not really feeling the riches of it yet, the goodness of it yet.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, Ramakrishna was a very great saint who
Or
lived
just
in
get the
the
book and read it.
1800s. No, it's okay. And he said that essentially every repetition of one of these names of God, as they call them in India, one of these mantras, these names, is a seed. And just like a big tree could have, has a tiny little seed, that tree lives in that seed, in the potentiality, in the possibilities. So in the name, the seed holds reality in it. It holds awakening, because these names are the names of that place within us that is the real thing, you know. And so every repetition of one of these names carries that power. And he says that these seeds may get caught by the wind and get caught on the roof of an old house in the jungle, and between the clay tiles on the house. And then over many seasons and rain and wind and snow and sun, the tiles start to break down and they get soft. And at that point, the seeds of the repetition of the name that we ourselves have done start to grow. And they start to grow roots. And those roots grow and grow, and they actually destroy the roof of the house. And they keep growing, and they destroy the whole house. Ramakrishna says that house is who we think we are. Our conventional self of who we seem to be to ourselves. A separate individual surrounded by other separate individuals. A house separated, surrounded by other houses, right? So houses are created for a reason, to hold us and to protect us from the outside. And so they separate us from everything else, just like the ego separates us from other egos. And he says that the repetition of the name destroys those walls and opens us up to being the whole universe. And we, instead of being caught in that me, we are released into the oneness naturally. It's not a button we've pushed to make it happen. It's the seeds we've planted that found the right time to grow, found the right causes and conditions to grow. And you notice what he doesn't talk about. He doesn't talk about how you feel when you're doing the practice, because it's irrelevant. It isn't about you or me or how you feel. That's just your stuff going on, the evaluative mind. So it's that's a very nice way to talk about it, that we're simply planting seeds. First of all, every thought, every action is a karma, is a seed, which will come to fruition in one way or another. So if we plant seeds of greed, of fear, of shame, of anger, what do we get? That's what we get. So now we're taking some time to plant some seeds for the things we'd like to happen. Kindness, compassion, caring, joy, happiness. Things that us depressed people, don't even think can really happen for us, And then all of a sudden the lights go on and we go, oh, that's cool. you know. Of course,
Yeah.
the lights go off again, but that's all right, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's planting seeds. It's taking the time to honor oneself and one's deepest desires.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And yeah, just further on that note of planting seeds and bringing in intentionality, planting good seeds, which is beautiful, but it seems often in its kind of immature state. And I've heard you talk about like the phony holy, and I've heard Ram Dass talk about like the horny celibate and stuff like that. And like a horny celibate who's honest about their horniness, or just a horny sexual person being honest about their horny sexuality, is much more free than someone pretending to be free and celibate, but they're just suppressing all that sexuality. So it seems like all this, and then you talking about the phony holy, like it's so seductive to think we're planting good seeds by trying to be positive, yet underneath it is a whole lot of shit. What do you think about that fine line of like being honest with our neuroses and our desires at the same time, yeah, planting good seeds at the same time being honest? What do you think?
Well, uh, it's a slippery slope
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Uh, one can one can be lost and and egoistically identified with being somebody who's honest about their horniness as a way of uh, making excuses for one's lack of control and
Right.
lack of vision about how you treat other people and how we use other people for
Sure.
our own pleasure. Uh, and of course, but you know, and this whole image of celibacy being important uh, is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, my guru never asked us to do anything. He never asked us to be one way or another. He never he never tried to change us in any way externally. We didn't all have to wear the same clothes. We didn't even like each other. There were people, you know, in the group that they were totally, you know. So, uh, uh, so one has to pay attention because one can really just go ahead and create more suffering for oneself and not notice it. So, for instance, the last thing my guru ever said to me was, "Do what you want." He was sending me back to America after 2.5 years in India, and I had never planned to go back to America. So I never thought of it. And all of a sudden, bam. So I was thinking, what am I going to do, you know?
Mm.
And he just said, you know, do what you want. He put it on me. I had to find out what I wanted.
Right.
And I'm still finding out because every day you see yourself getting eaten up by one thing or another, you know, your own emotional reactions. But it took me 21 years to start singing with people.
Mm-hmm.
21 years after he died before I started singing with people. Because it took me that long to figure out what I wanted to do, what I needed to do, even more, you know? And before that, I was just crazy, doing everything I wanted. And I didn't even think about it. I didn't think about celibacy. I didn't think about being a good person necessarily or any kind of practice, although I did some things, you know. I did a few meditation courses here and there, but I wasn't singing much. A little bit with, you know, closer friends that I knew from the old days. But to start singing with people as a practice, it took me 21 years. And everything I went through in those 21 years, I bring that to every moment of chanting in terms of
Mm-hmm.
my whole life. I bring, you know, This is me. I'm not avoiding anything anymore. I'm not pretending that I'm holy in the way that somebody might think. But what's more holy than learning to be good to oneself, you know? So I think the thing, especially with celibacy, and I think this is a neurotic issue that we as Westerners suffer from very, very badly, very in tremendous depth. The whole sexuality and romantic love. You know, we're taught that if we want love, we got to find it out there. So we use our bodies and our emotions to manipulate others to give us what we think we need, and we try to give others what they think they need in order so we can get what we need. You know, so a lot of it has to do with the whole idea of romantic love and soulmates and all that kind of stuff in a very Western way. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
Which
But I
brings me to
I was celibate in India for 2.5 years.
yeah.
You know, because I saw that my issues were going to take me away from Maharaji. They were gonna create a storyline that took me back to America.
Right.
And my job was to stay as close to those feet as humanly possible. So that's how I saw my life at that point. I didn't want to go anywhere. I only wanted to be with him physically. And which of course led to tremendous despair when the body was gone, when he dropped that body. So, you know, you're not going to get away from your stuff. There's no way you're going to go where you're not going to be, and your stuff is right there with you. It's a question of developing a little humility and an ability to not be too scared off by our stuff, to not to look at it and try to bring it into the moment and see how those shadows push us around.
Yeah. I remember Ramda speaking about neuroses and him admitting, yeah, I've still got neuroses, but I've reframed how I see them. I see them as my style now. It's not who I am. It's just my style. And I loved that. That really helped me just kind of not take it so seriously, not take it so personally, at the same time be able to see it with much more loving awareness. That definitely helped me, because we tend to identify, we think we are the house, like you said, and when we think we're that, and we've been conditioned to think that, and the social constructs further reinforce it. I mean, it's thick, it's so thick. And just remembering, oh, no big deal, it's just my style, that lightens the load quite a bit.
Well, you know, when you think you are who you think you are, you act that way.
Right.
But you don't always think that. You don't have to always, those thoughts don't always have to glue you to them. You don't have to identify with those thoughts. But it's not an act of will that frees you from the thought. For instance, here we are. We're going back and forth. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. There's like 1,000 people in the room. Everybody's singing, you know. And then you realize, oh, I've been thinking about the new car I want to buy, you know, for the last 20 minutes. Even though I've been singing, I haven't been paying any attention. So then you come back to the singing. How did that moment happen that you noticed that you haven't been there? You were gone. So it's not something you did with your own will. Like, okay, I'm now going to come back. No, you're gone. You're asleep.
Right.
How did you wake up? Huh? That's it right there. You didn't do that. That happened as a result of practice you've done in the past.
Right.
That's the fruit of the practice of these names. Repetition of these names is waking up to the here and now, waking up to being here, and then coming back to the sound of the name again. But the seeds that we plant bring us back. We can't bring ourselves back. The ego will do nothing to kill itself. Ramana Maharshi said that asking the mind or the ego to kill the ego is like asking the thief to be the policeman.
Right.
There'll be a lot of investigation, but no arrest will ever be made.
Yeah, true. So good. So in your experiences, say you're getting ready for a kirtan, or even in the earlier days when you were just starting to share chanting with the world, did you have the sabotaging thoughts that would stop you showing up? Or what I'm trying to say is
Yeah,
there
I
a
know what you're
place
saying.
for your willpower? Like, would you sometimes have to dig deep into some willpower to then come back to the practice and get out of the way? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for me it
Yeah.
was more subtle.
Hmm.
Uh, Once I sit down to sing, that's what I'm doing.
Right.
There's only one thing going on, chanting and coming back to chanting. That's it.
Hmm.
However, I started singing with people in probably August 94. And after 6 months or so, I realized that I can't do this. I saw that the energy and power from the practice was generating so much focus on me that I could see all my desires were getting ready to gobble it all up and use. I was going to use all that to satisfy my own hungry desires, and I was I, I couldn't I couldn't do that. That's not why was doing this practice. I needed to connect again to Maharaji from my side. He had never let go of me, but I was running away from him for a long time. So now I needed to find a way to get back into his presence from my side. And I saw that my my stuff was stopping me and was going to stop me, and that I couldn't do this practice purely with the right intention. I just wasn't able to. And so I quit. I quit and I went to India, and I said to Maharaji, who's already been dead for 20 years, I said, listen, this is your problem. You got to fix this. If you don't fix this, I'm not singing. I'm singing to people in your name. Fix it or I don't sing. Good night. I wake up in the morning, nothing had changed. Day after day after day. Uh, it was a terrible time. And I just got a message that my battery is low and the computer's going to turn off. So can I
Okay.
walk? Can I walk inside and
Please do. Yeah.
I'll walk inside.
Sure.
This is Krishna Das walking. Hopefully not falling over and not
Looks like
dropping the
a
computer.
beautiful night there, huh?
Yeah, it's a very lovely night today.
Mm.
Now he's walking to the kitchen.
Mm.
Hello. And walking out of the kitchen and coming into what he calls his office, which is where he doesn't do anything.
Thank you for the tour.
And then sitting down, hopefully, turning the light on. Hold on. Good. Okay. Plugging the computer in. And we're down to 9% power. All right. Good.
Plugged in,
Very
supported.
plugged. Yeah.
Beautiful. Good work.
Thank you. Yeah. So I went to India on the spring solstice. I arrived in India, and I went to be with my Indian parents, the Tiwaris. They were in Lucknow at the time at their son's house, and they were both very sick and not well, and it was very hot. April in Lucknow. It was like 120 degrees, no air conditioning. It was rough. And every day I wake up and Maharaji hadn't done anything. every day. It was such a terrible time. And I was in such despair, man. I can't even describe it. Because the one thing that I could do to save my miserable ass, I was being prevented from doing by my own stuff. And there was nothing I could do about that. So every day I say, come on, you haven't done anything. What's going on here, So it was very, I was in total despair, and I really didn't think it wasn't happening. So I didn't know what to think, so. But finally, a lot of things changed, and something actually, he did something. He saved my ass. And I was able to come back and sing.
So
So
what did he do? For people
what
that
did he
this is a little bit mysterious for them, and
No,
it's
this is mysterious for me. I
yes.
don't even know.
So what did he do?
Well, one thing I could say that he did was it was like the curtain was parted on the stage. And I could see I could see that I can only talk from my own experience. I experienced as if he was pulling all the strings for everything. He was like this incredible puppet master who had manifested a puppet of himself here in this world for us, because we're puppets and we have puppet eyes. So he made a puppet of himself to get our attention. But that wasn't the real Maharaji. That was a puppet of the real Maharaji. In other words, anyway, so
Oh, I hear you.
so and what I felt, what I experienced was that that there is this vast being, this vast presence, like the sky, in which we all live. And there can't be anything outside of that. Everything is within this vast presence, this vast being. And because we identify with our thoughts, we don't experience that. So by his grace, there was a short period that I was freed from my thoughts, and I experienced just being.
Right.
And in fact, at one point I looked up in the sky and I laughed because I saw this like thickening in the sky, in this like way up in the sky, this little thickening, and it whirling around. And I laughed and I thought, that's Krishna Das Ness.
Yeah.
And I saw, when I think I'm Krishna Das, I really think I'm Krishna Das, and I act like Krishna Das. But when I don't, there's just this space, which is just presence and being. And I'm totally here, but it's not me. It's just I'm a part of this incredible space. But when I'm stupid and I think I'm me, I'm stupid and I think I'm me. And the thing that was really far out was that I saw that even when I'm stupid and I think I'm me, it doesn't affect this space. This is always here. So that's how I was freed to come back and sing. Because even when I'm stupid and I think that I'm really chanting good tonight and all these people are really going to love me, it doesn't fucking matter where I think. It has nothing to do with this space. And the space is not affected by it. I can't ruin it. It's just a question of how long I'm going to be stupid, that's all. So
And do
that
you
was
find,
liberating.
yeah, wow, thank you for sharing. And so just to pick apart that period where you were waiting for Maharaji, he wasn't coming, he wasn't helping. How long was that? And do you see in retrospect that that was a necessary chapter? You weren't ripe, you weren't ready. What do you think that was?
Well, what it was what was required
Hmm.
was surrender,
Yeah.
which I didn't, not only didn't I understand that, but even if I had understood that, I wouldn't have known what it was.
Hmm.
So what happened towards the end of my time in India, just before I had this experience, every day I would go out to the back of the temple where it was dark. You know, in the old days there was no light in the valley at night. There was one bulb in the front of the temple, in the courtyard. But now there's floodlights everywhere. But there's a couple of corners where there's no floodlights and you can see the sky. And I would go up and I look at the sky and I said, what's the deal? You're not doing anything. I got 3 more days and that's it. Then I'm going home. I'm not singing. Unless you fix this, I'm not singing. You got it? Every day. So finally, on the day before this big celebration, I was really, I can't even tell you the desolation and despair that I was in. I went out there in the back of the temple and I just looked up at the star and the stars and I just said, I don't get it. You can do this. Why aren't you doing this? I don't get it. If you wanted to, you could do this. You understand? I didn't even know what I expected to happen. You know, it wasn't like I just knew something had to change, but I didn't know what it was. So I said, I don't get it. And I finally said, if you don't want to do it, I can't make you. What am I going to do? All right, I'll go back. I'll sing. How bad can it be? Good night. And of course, the next day, everything changed. And in retrospect, that was the moment of surrender, where I really fully just said, all right, I'll deal with it the way I am.
Hmm.
I didn't like it, but what was I going to do? My faith and understanding and trust is that he could do whatever he wants with me, and certainly with my mind. He can give me this experience or that experience, put me in samadhi or take me out. He could do anything. So if he's not doing it, it's because he's not doing it, not because it can't be done. So if it's not happening, what am I going to do? I can't force him. I'll sing. I won't like it, but I'll sing. And that
Right.
was what precipitated the change. You
Hmm.
can't fake that, though. I needed 6 months of torture in order to get to that point.
It reminds me of quite a few masterful teachers that have shared after years of just really trying, really sitting, really chanting, really trying to get free. It came to a point of what they share is a feeling of defeat, like almost like giving up. Like that's the equivalent of the willpower thing. Like
Yeah,
I give up. I give up. I'm done. And
yeah,
this then in that giving up is what we perceive in the West, because all of our emphasis goes on ambition and just keep going, keep trying. It's like the opposite of that, almost not trying, giving it up, surrendering into that deeper flow. Sounds like similar to what you experienced,
yeah. It's accepting yourself as you are,
right?
not as who you imagine you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, that's because we grew up with love and affection being used as a controlling mechanism. And so we think we have to deserve the love and affection. by being good little boys and girls and have no shadows. But who's like that? Nobody. So it's a question of just recognizing this is me. I'll deal with it. I'll do what I have to do to deal with it. Fine. Without, there's no contract to sign. Maharaji said, once I asked Siddhima, Maharaji's great devotee, I said, Ma, should I meditate? And she said, well, should I meditate or should I sing, basically? And she said, well, what do you like to do? And I went, what I like to do is good for me? My mother never told me that. Whoa. And then she said, Krishnadas, in 40 years with Maharaji, he never asked me to meditate. He asked me to do japa and to be, to take care of people and feed people and treat people well and love, serve, remember, as you might have heard. And she said that Maharaji had said that you cannot precipitate the more subtle states of consciousness through the use of your personal will. You purify your heart, you purify your actions, your motivations, and when you are ready, they happen, that those things will manifest within you. But you can't use your ego, will, to bring about ego-less states of mind. It doesn't work. So at another point, years later, I said, Ma, Maharaji said that he used to say to us, I have the keys to the mind. I could turn your minds against me. And he would laugh.
Oh, yeah.
And we said, Baba, don't do that, don't do that. And he would laugh. Ah. So I said, Ma, Maharaji said he has the keys to the mind. So that means to me that I am where he wants me to be, where he has put me. So Ma, is it all grace? Is it all his doing? Or is my effort required? She said, Krishnadas, it's all grace. But you have to act like it isn't. It's a done deal, but you don't know that. So you have to put one foot in front of the other. As long as you think there's something to do and someone to do it, then you have to do it. So most of the time we think we are who we think we are, and that person has a lot of work to do.
Yeah. So on the to further feed that, this whole being love, loving kindness, cultivating love, there's a common obstacle in that for so many people, a common fear and resistance. So this being love that many of us do perceive it to be a place of, we might get stabbed in the back. We might be excessively vulnerable and susceptible to criticism and hurt and whatnot. Can you relate to that?
That's when you're not love.
Right.
Yeah. That's in our normal state. We're vulnerable. We're susceptible to criticism. We're being stabbed in the back by our own self all the time. Mm-hmm. That's our reality. When you have become love, there's only love everywhere. And there's nothing stronger than love.
So you just got to keep practicing, right?
Yeah, you have to keep practicing and dealing with your own mind. Mm-hmm. And loving awareness. Ram Dass and I used to talk about this. At first he used to say, I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. And that is an introductory way of saying that. The next step is to say, loving awareness. Loving awareness itself. Not I am loving awareness. Mm. But that's a good beginning, because most of the time we identify with I am cranky, I am nasty, I'm horny, I'm this, I'm a guy, I'm a girl, I'm 6 feet, I'm 4 feet. So to pull ourselves out of those identifications, we try to identify with being loving awareness. So that's the practice. It's a practice that deepens and ripens. And you're not trying to convince yourself you're loving awareness. That's bullshit. You can't. What? That's just more nonsense. You're trying to become aware of the loving presence within us, which is who we really are already, always, but which is covered up by our stuff. So it's not. This is not a positive affirmation. This is cultivating the awareness of the place within us that is that. Positive affirmation is only useful in a very narrow bandwidth, and it's good for certain things, but it's not good for finding your true nature. That you can't do with your will. You can't manipulate yourself into that. You can only let go into that. So by recognizing, recognizing this awareness again and again, it releases you from the stuff and brings you back to yourself again and again. And, you were talking about neurosis, there were times that Ram Dass didn't feel like he was loving awareness, that he was very stuck in his stuff. But over the years, the amount of time he spent identified with that stuff became less and less and less. So, like I said, when you think you are who you think you are, you think you are. But when you don't, you're not. So, but those are thoughts. You can't stop the thoughts. You can't shoot them as they go by. You can only be aware and let go. And that's why it's the practice of the repetition of the name is so powerful. It gives you something to come back to that itself has magnetism and Shakti in it, and and holds you at home in a good way.
For people that are completely new to this, can you think of...
They probably turned this off a long time ago.
But they're vibing off it. They're new to it, but they're vibing off it. Where do you think they should start? What mantra would you say? Hanuman Chalisa.
No, I would say, help.
Yes.
Help! That's what you do. Scream it out loud 108 times. Help! I would just say, really recognize that most of the suffering is in the mind. Even with everything that's going on in the outside world, the so-called outside world, where do we feel the pain and the fear and anxiety inside ourselves? So the first step is allowing the mind to settle a little bit. That's all. Whether you can count backwards from 100, you can watch your breath, you can repeat a mantra. Just gently, for short periods of time, try to get used to releasing thoughts and coming back to the mantra or to the object of concentration or meditation. Just be gentle with ourselves and just keep coming back again and again. And don't expect, fireworks, and don't expect to be levitating or flying around, If you can just get through the day without killing anybody, that's a great thing. And without killing ourselves inside, destroying ourselves.
I'm glad you brought up the fireworks thing, because as you'd be aware of, psychedelics and drugs are possibly even more prevalent than back in the 60s and 70s. I mean, there's a lot of people doing them, a lot of yogis using psychedelics to just maybe go deeper on the path or have just more higher peak experiences. And I've done it. I see the value in it, but I also see a lot of people overusing it, not integrating in a balanced way. What are your views on psychedelics on the path?
Maharaji was very clear. The yogi medicine LSD brings you into the room, can bring you into the room with Christ, but you can't stay. The only way to stay is love. People get attached to those so they call them blissful states, but that's because people don't really know what bliss is. But those pleasant states, those states of extreme pleasure and excitement and visions and all that stuff that you get, people get attached to that, so they keep going back there, not recognizing that they are destroying their will, and they're like destroying their home, and taking themselves out into those states of consciousness through the chemicals. I did it too, and without peyote and LSD, I wouldn't be here today. I don't think. But at some point, I recognized that going up and down and up and down and up and down was not, and I recognized if I stopped shooting myself up into the atmosphere, not shooting up, but shooting, propelling myself up there and crashing back down, that the consciousness, the plateau of my consciousness would rise, and it wouldn't be up and down. And Maharaji, he showed us that he not only knew what these chemicals are and what they do, but that he was totally beyond that situation. That he took them. Ram Dass twice gave him humongous amount of acid, and nothing happened at all. It was nothing. There was no one in there that to have experiences like that. He was is the universe, and all those things are included. So, like too much of anything is too much, and that's up to each individual to figure out for themselves. But in the long run, chemicals are not going to free you of your identification with your ego, because you always know you're having the experience, even if you don't think you are at the moment. It's happening to you rather than you are within it. There's it's a whole different ball game without the chemical.
Krishna Das, is there anything you want to let our listeners know about? Anything coming up online, or maybe even in person soon?
No, not so soon. No, I don't imagine anything's going to be going on in person for quite some time. Thursday nights here in New York time, I sing every Thursday, and they're up on YouTube after we finish, so all y'all in Australia can watch it anytime you want. Also on Saturdays, almost every Saturday, I tend to do what we call a chai and chat, which is where a big Zoom meeting where we can interact and do questions and answers. Thursday night's completely free. Saturday we take it. There's about $20 or something like that. And then that's it. Ongoing, all kinds of things are going on.
Beautiful.
But you can just check my website, krishnadas.com.
Well, such a pleasure, such an honor, KD. Really
nice. Thanks so much for inviting me. Sorry to make you get up so early.
No, good. But I really appreciate it, and all the best there in New York. And much love.
All right, much love. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.